Hey neighbors, the handyman here with Initiative Coffee Company along with John Jingleheimer Delmaro, and today we're talking about DDAL 3-16, Assault on Maeramydra. Writer Greg Marks, editors Claire Hoffman, Chris Tulach, and Travis Woodall. This is an 8-hour module for Tier 3 play, tuned for 5 13th level characters. A vast assault, the heroes are responsible for deploying allies they've made and taking the fight to the city of Maeramydra. Part 1, on the eve of war. The adventure starts with our heroes in Sportum, surrounded by the allies they have made over 15 modules. 6 objectives need to be achieved, but only 2 can be completed by the heroes. All of these have some kind of combat potential, as well as an additional objective. After battle plans are drawn, the party is offered additional supplies and heads out. Jake, start us off. The second of 2 back-to-back Tier 3 8-hour mods.
There is not enough prep, as I said in the last mod, that you could do to anticipate what's going to happen in this mod.
Nope.
Like, this, I cannot in good faith tell a DM to run this in 8 hours. It's not going to happen.
And I don't know that, like...
No shot.
Maybe this is like a hot take, but I'm kind of over 8 hour. Like, we're running a lot of 2-hour mods right now,
and they're wonderful.
And I love 2-hour modules so much that, like,
you could be doing something else with the rest of the day.
I don't know that I ever want to do another 8-hour mod. Like, I just don't need them in my life.
So I do like this mod because of what it represents.
Sure.
I don't like this mod for the current rules in AL.
I think that's fair. I think this mod feels like it ties up loose ends.
It does.
In a way that Season 1 and Season 2's capstone mods didn't, right? Like, it feels like you're really, like, finishing some tasks and, like, getting stuff dealt with and achieved here in a way that, like, Fleeing Flan did not feel. Or I don't even remember what the capstone in Season 2 was, right?
Like, I don't either. But either way, like, what I don't like about the current rules are, for instance, last mod, you could have earned, like, north of 20,000 gold. You jump into this mod, and, well, 20,000 gold, and you would have only earned 2,000 total.
Yeah.
No. 4,000? 4,000. 4,000 if you run the full 8 hours, and then you leveled. So it's kind of there, but the problem is there's only one tier. There's only one tier 3 adventure thus far in the season, and
there's so many objectives. Like in the last mod, there's objectives tied to money that doesn't exist, right? Like one of the objectives is like pay 10,000 gold.
And that's unrealistic.
Ilvas, so that you can get.
You literally do not have.
Nobody has, like, combined. If you have a 5-person party, 10,000 gold at level 12 is tough to
But mind you, right during the entire sequence of events of you getting to the Whispered Den, you'd have encountered 15,000. Mind you, over 15,000 gold. I've been like, here, take this stuff we can't have. Like, so what the problem with this mod is, in the current rule set, is you can give money to, like, you could spend your war effort money to get mercenaries, get extra stuff, which then allows for DC rolls in the future to go down. And that to me is so cool because it was like a way. It was the way at the time to get
people to burn
money
through their
out
cash.
of gold. People to burn through their,
because there's nothing to spend gold on.
The last time I played this mod was at Hero Camp, like 5 years ago, or I don't know how many, 3 years ago, and we were playing pre-season 8 or season 7 characters that had
70,000 gold, 200,000 gold, 1 million gold, whatever.
So much gold, and it's like bad rolls from the DM, but like me and Big Mar spent, I think, like just the two of us spent like 50 to 75,000 gold, and our DM still had horrid rolls, and we didn't get the support because his horrid rolls were transcending not only his enemies,
right,
but to us.
yeah.
And that sucks.
Yeah, I think like the issue with these like sweeping rules changes,
Is it
other
impacts
than
these
there's a
other
lack
mods.
other than there's a lack of continuity and a lack of consistency, is that like so much of the early mods are focused on things that don't exist anymore, right? Like so much is focused on like buy resources. Like think of like Outlaws of the Iron Route, right?
Yep.
Buy resources so you can stage the right attack. Well, we have 30 gold apiece, right?
Yeah.
That's problematic. Spend money on
stinks.
mercenaries so you can win this initial assault.
Or assist.
Right. Like
give yourself better options, give your opportunities. And like those things do impact the rest of the mod.
Mhm.
Not like sweepingly, but they do impact the rest of the mod to
Mhm.
like what's going to be helping, what can make your stuff easier. And I think that's why I like this mod in its own universe, like as something that you could re-flavor this entire thing, take this out of AL,
Mhm.
and you have an amazing mod for whatever capstone fight you want for an individualized homebrew campaign. Like this,
or if you're running season 3 outside of AL, right? Like
Yeah.
you can give money away. Like I mean, there are other organized play structures that steal the mods from AL. You don't have to play in an organized play structure. You can just run the mod. There's a lot of content here that is
It's
frankly
very
better served
well
outside
built.
of AL at this point. But
Yes, but I love the way it's built.
Mhm.
And that's the problem, I think, because if it's not run in a continuous setting where you have players that have been taking notes about who they can tap on the shoulder for favors.
Mhm.
That's how we did it in when we ran this. It with the current season rules was, hey, give me this, like,
Yeah.
we understand there's been an Adventure League shortage of gold, like, and reduce the amounts, because if someone can't buy some of this stuff, it's like, oh, that sucks. But like, they were like, oh, we helped the Myconids. Great. We helped those random we helped so and so.
Mhm.
And like they'll contribute, and I give them kind of resource points.
What about those farmers from the first module?
Yeah,
Will they
they'll
help?
give you
Yeah, I
food.
guess.
Awesome.
I don't know.
Great. Like they'll donate food to the war effort.
Right.
Great.
Cool.
Awesome. That freed up some other people to not have to go and acquire food. Now you have another resource point. And like that's once again a DM discretion usage, because I don't want my players getting bamboozled by lack of resources thought out from made retroactive decisions, or made decisions that harmed retroactive mods, where it's 1,000 gold pieces to hire a mercenary group. They don't have it. They just don't have it. Like,
yeah, especially when it's clearly the intent of the module.
Yeah,
right?
this is a resource dump.
Like, I talk about not focusing on author's intent a lot, but I talk about that in comparison to putting the players over an author's intent. Not necessarily putting, like, the structure of organized play over the author's intent. Like, I think there are ways to make these, like, mercenary groups available and reach out to contacts that would normally cost money that
don't.
Maybe the war effort has a slush fund, right? Maybe, I don't know, like come up with solutions that allow players, maybe not a lot, maybe they can't hire mercenaries for all 4 of these parts, right?
But anyone they can remember, I'm like, all right, cool.
If they can remember a named NPC, that named NPC has people that will help them, in my mind.
And the other part to mention about the whole author intent is Greg Marks is an AL admin.
Sure.
And whenever you play with him at the table, he's a resource-intensive guy. So I don't think, and I don't think that this is what you implied, but I wanted to reiterate, I don't think that his intentions with this mod were of the negative variety. It's just that right now there's not enough AL admin support, or even just support to like go back and look at these mods. Like, that's the issue. Like, hey, here's a little, like, just to briefly run through some of their mods and be like, hey, this is a quick fix, like, that kind of stuff. And they're not required to do it. Like,
and realistically, like,
$20.
maybe they have. I downloaded this mod 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Before that was,
but they haven't, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like they haven't.
Yeah.
And it's, I think if you were to be like, hey, this is how I ran it, you'd be like, all right, like, that's a good way to make adjustments to your system.
I think by and large most of the admin would be fine with that. Like I've met 3 or 4 of them. I can't speak for all of them, but I know Travis would probably feel the same way.
He'd be like, all right, cool. Like, any of them are gonna be like, all right, cool. Like, did your people have fun?
Exactly.
And like, and I think this is where Season 3 mods really shine when written well, is like, you have now transcended being the cannon fodder to some degree, and now you're allocating resources, and I think that's like
part of that is just tier 3 play, right?
Yeah,
part of that is like you finally made it to tier 3 on a character for the first time,
and like, so, this character has the contacts, has the experience, where even though there's just players, they don't. But like, in the story itself, people are coming to you to what should we do?
Right.
Yeah, and it's not like, hey, go do this.
Yeah.
You're the one they're saying to you, hey, we appreciate everything you've done thus far. What should we do now since all the things you've done? Like, how can you allocate? What can you do? What can we do?
Yeah.
And I think this is probably the part where I say to anyone joining in or wondering how level structuring works, and I know I'm off point here on a really long mod, but I think this is kind of one of those situations wherever I explain, hey, these are the different levels and different tiers, this is like one of those things that like I can gravitate towards, because it's like, you're no longer just the lackey.
Right.
You kind of are. You kind of are.
The Dungeon Masters guy says at tier 3 you're a noted hero in the realms.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
but Eleanor still doesn't know who the hell you are.
Well, But that is clearly what is leaned into here, is like, you're a hero, you're known, you're respected in the area. Yeah. Like, you're in charge of putting together a fighting force. You're a general, right?
That's cool. And I love it.
I think so.
So at this point, going back to the mod itself, I think there is, once again, if you're running this in a series, this is your flagship or your capstone mod, I think you should have an idea, or even, I think what I did, if I remember correctly, I sent out the missions to the party, like, ahead of the scheduled session. I was like, hey, I know how chaotic this mod is. Can you guys come to an agreement about what you guys want to do? Choose 2 here, and like, there's a player handout for it. And I gave him the second player handout for the next part. So like, this is kind of what I would say helps make you a better a DM, and it's a small thing that makes you look more responsible. And
prep and tools, man. Prep and tools are huge, right? And obviously that's not going to be the case if you're running this mod at a convention where like like the table doesn't know each other. I think like this mod is best served as a capstone. I think it's kind of underwhelming, frankly, if you use it as like a one-off, right? Like, if you are going to run this at a con table, I think like so much of this ties up so many loose ends that you've already experienced throughout the season that if it's not meant to do that, it feels lackluster almost. And which is disappointing, because this mod is I enjoy this mod a lot, right? So like, to go from being a very like fun and interactive and like satisfying module to being one that's like, I guess I know some people from Flan, or I have an organization I'm allied with in Waterdeep, let me give them a call, kind of thing. It just doesn't.
So that is what it is.
Part 2, Initial Assault. Part 2 consists of paperwork. All 6 objectives need to be solved, and you, the DM, need to make some quick rolls, add factional support, and let the heroes know if they succeeded or... Well, you'll let them know during the counterattack if they succeeded or failed, because it will have consequences in Part 3. This is pretty simple. It's like a D20 roll. There's target DCs. If factions or if they send resources that way, they get +1. If not, they don't.
I like to almost let somebody else deal with that, because I'm like, I don't want to be the reason. And then, I mean, they shouldn't all succeed. I don't know, but letting
automatically one of them fails, right?
Yeah, like, I do like letting the hand of, like, you did something. It could be good, could be bad.
Mhm.
Let's see. And it happens. Like you can fudge the rolls as needed, and once again, paperwork I think is a nice way of putting it.
Mhm.
There's a lot going on here. The more you can cut out from using your tools and the like, makes this a lot more enjoyable. This is an 83-page mod, so you know
Try to streamline this.
try to streamline as much as you can. There's a lot of if and factors. If this, then that. If not this, then that. So like just maybe even doing like a simple flow diagram. I did when I ran this. I have it somewhere where it was just like, hey, this person has this. This means this happens. That means that happens. And like you can shuffle all the papers you need to, but if you just can put a big X through everything you don't need, it makes this a lot more streamlined. That's just all it is. And when you got these combats, just keep going. Like just have them ready to go. Don't be surprised. Have stuff pre-read, pre-done. I had all my monsters pretty much ready to go. I had all the stat blocks on a separate screen because we were running this at home. I had everything prepared and like snipped and created, and because this is just a cumbersome fight. These are just fights. There's not really any social encounters in here, except for like the dwarves, which was super fun. Which where you get
Recruit dwarves.
Undead dwarves, which was super cool.
It was fun. I liked it. It's time to get caught up. It gives the players time to go, I don't know, use the bathroom or whatever while you do some rolls. It is what it is. Board. Yeah, I mean,
I don't think it's a good way of running this thing. And not in like a this is a bad mod. Like or not in a bad way. This is not a bad mod. I think that this is just a lot on the board. Like once again, I would go back to just like writing out like, hey, this is what happens in this mod. These are what the monsters that they're gonna fight. This happens in this part of the mod. These are who they're gonna fight. Because there's, as per the usual with AL mods, they bold every kind of stat block that there could have been. And in one paragraph, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13, 19 creatures that could be on the board, and it keeps going every other round. Another amount shows up.
Yeah,
so,
like, and I would make sure that if you're gonna fudge rolls, make sure they're not failing all 4 of them, because it's a tough fight without any modifiers, right? Without any failure modifiers. So, going in. Speaking of
even passing all those tough fights or whatever, it's.
Speaking of the tough fight, Part 3, Counterattack. After the heroes meet success or failures with specific objectives, they're faced with a demonic counterattack from Maeramydra. It's a tough battle regardless of modifications from Part 2, but can be even more challenging very quickly, as the failures from Part 2 complicate the battle. It's a tough battle that is immediately followed up by a second tough battle. This mod is not forgiving in any way. Right, and I think that's to its credit. I think like a capstone module should not be forgiving. But
I agreed.
The big fight starts off with a shadow demon, 2 fire giant whelps,
which
a
are still
or
mean.
2. Like there's a lot to begin with, and then if you've failed any of the modules in Part 2, like. More Quaggoth can show up. More Quaggoth can show up. Even more Quaggoth can show up. Your enemies can be aided and blessed. Like,
don't forget, fire giant whelps have longer reach than their older counterparts.
Yeah. If your party takes, for whatever reason, if your party takes a short rest,
other things happen.
Like the Shadow Demon and the Fiendborn Fire Giant Whelps have Death Ward. Like it's wild.
It's rough.
Yeah, it's a tough fight. So there you go.
I mean, I think once again, the people that play this mod know typically what they're getting into at this point in AL.
Yeah.
Once again, for capstone fight, I agree. This is a tough fight. It does not stop.
This is the first of 3 tough fights.
In this
back
part.
to back, yeah. But I mean, it's a tough fight. But all of your players' hard work in Part 1 pays off or doesn't here. Well, it pays off one way or the other. But
I think that's why I like this, is because as a DM, I've always struggled with some of these combats because I don't like I like telling my story through my players' actions.
yeah,
And I give them scenarios, and they can do whatever the heck they want.
I like this module a lot because there are clear cause and effect relationships.
Yes, and I feel less bad also when I throw a ton of crap at them. Because it's like
because of their failures or successes,
yeah. So like me naturally wanting to increase or decrease stuff on other situations throughout other parts of the season, want to be like, oh, you're fighting like a wormling, and it's like, we're tier 2, and it's like it should be a dragon, and this is like the baseline scenario is like just deadly.
Right, and Greg Marks is pretty notorious for that. Kind of throughout all of his mods,
and in person in his mods, he is someone who doesn't wet blanket stuff.
And frankly, I think that's a weakness of tier 3 in general throughout Adventures League, is the combats seem
either overwhelming or they're not, or underwhelming.
Yeah.
Like overwhelming to the point where you're just like, I just recharged my Dragon's Breath and I just did 90 damage to you, and you're like, this is tier 3.
Yeah.
And then like the other part's like, I throw 4 goblins at you, and you're like,
this is tier 3.
The wizard's gonna stab him. And it's like, well, that's how the wizard's job is. He's like, he's not gonna cast anything else. He's gonna take a dagger out and throw. He's gonna throw a dagger at them.
Yeah.
Like, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's fun. I think this is once again, it feels very much of a the proper flow of war, and I like that a lot.
Yeah. Part 4, a surprise visit from Mother. Immediately after the counterattack, the heroes are summoned to help fight off a horde of maddened Darrow that are worshipping a demon. Heroes will be forced to fight their way through the maddening Darrow and egg bombardments, where they will finally meet up with a powerful Drider, the last of Mother's defenders. The Drider fight is the second of 3 very challenging combats. The eggs all have different effects. Some of them explode. Some of them summon hordes of swarms of insects.
This is tough. Like, as a DM, I'm sitting here going like, I might have just put this out of my head when I was rereading this stuff. I was like, oh my goodness, this is bad. Because the thing is you as a DM are responsible for some of it. Not some, all of it. And it feels like there's not enough organizational tips we could give you where it's overwhelming. And it's tough. But run well and organized well, this mod becomes much more manageable. And it's still deadly. I mean, I'm not going to take that away, but as I said, part 2 of 3 deadly fights. Like, the thing is not easy to kill. And at this point, you could probably start telling this is going to be a point where, if they haven't already, this is one of those situations where I think as a DM, you have to do a temp check on your players, being like, is everyone still good? Like, we've just done 3 hours of combat.
Right. And we have another hour
there's another hour of combat.
Yeah.
Like, and that's where the natural break in the mod will be. But it's like, you have 4 hours of combat, so it's going to be, like, and I don't think there's any resource checks that you can do here as a DM to really...
Maybe
I don't think
maybe in part
I don't want to. I don't want to.
Yeah. I don't want to. Maybe in part 2. I don't want to, but, like, maybe in part 2 where the party is, like, doing 2 of those mini modules, like those mini
find
encounters,
something
you could do a resource check.
But, like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Like, I want them to run through this mod, but it's like, I as a DM get bored of combat, but it's like, don't disservice your players here.
Yeah.
And we love, I don't say skipping combat, but, like, consolidating combat in ways that make sense, because it's like, you want to, the round or two rounds after there's nothing new that the person's going to do, you're just hit points. It's just hit points.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't think at any point in this mod you can do that. You're not. I don't think you should.
I don't think so either, to be frank. There's
don't disservice your players.
So much of this module so much of the challenge of this module is kind of the unending waves of combat, right?
Yeah.
Like, this module is not difficult if there's a short rest after every encounter, right?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't... Yeah, so...
Yeah.
I don't know. And, like, the fatigue, right? Like, the player fatigue that sets in, like, adds to all of that kind of tension and all of that...
It's a good
narrative
tension.
Right, it's intentional, right? Like, it's narrative tension, and so I think it's pretty useful and pretty valuable.
Yep.
Especially in a capstone module, right?
Exactly.
Part 5, Mommy Dearest. After defeating the Drider, there's no time for respite as the heroes must move on to a third tough encounter with the demonic mother and her rock demon. The frightening scene of the mother birthing of Rock Demon requires saves from the party to avoid the maddening effects prevalent in Season 3, as well as spotlights challenge that can get out of hand in a hurry. So the legendary actions of the mother are summon a rock, summon a Glabberzo, or summon... What's the third one they can summon?
No, it's Succubus, Bargora, and Vrock.
Just like every turn.
A CR16.
Every turn, they just drop more demons on the table. This is meant to, like, highlight to your players that Mother is the primary target, right? Like, if she's summoning demons every round, like, you have to bring her down first, otherwise things are going to get out of hand.
She hits like a truck. She has 7 attacks, 6 with tentacles, 1 with its tongue. Each attack has a +9 to hit for 13 damage with 10-foot reach. And the tongue, as a 15-foot reach, hits with a +9 for 15 damage. And then can just keep doing stuff. Oh, and it can teleport.
Oh, you know.
Mind you, it's a huge fiend.
Right. You know, just teleporting.
Just
fine.
This is one of the silliest.
This is the third of 3 tough encounters. It is not the hardest encounter in the module.
It's a CR16 plus whatever the heck it spawns.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting because if you kill her, everything dies.
Yeah.
And that you can't really telegraph that too well. I mean, she still is a AC18, hit points 189 at average.
Yeah.
Like it gets not great.
Yeah.
And
it gets out of hand in a hurry.
And then there's they mentioned this. This is a theater of the... I don't know why they did kind of a theater of mind here. They did like attempted at a map, but like there's also supposed to be like almost like landmines in the map as well. Because of Darrow like the Darrow servants worshiping her, and she can eat them, and she heals from them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
she sure
this
does.
is some bullcrap Tiamat level crap.
Mm-hmm.
Dead center in the mod.
Yeah.
After you just spent all your resources in 2 totally tough fights.
Right.
That this is a tougher fight. And like, God, Greg Marks, you've done it, you bastard, you. You've done it, you have body slammed players into walls with these people, with these back-to-back fights, and I love it.
Yep.
I feel not bad once again when I'm like, guys, this is just the mod.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I see 3 of my players are down, and as D&D happens, a paladin smite occurs and dies. But is what it is.
This is another situation where you need to have everything prepped ahead of time. Like, know what you're gonna throw out each round.
Yeah.
Like, I would just have like a notepad where it's like the first round is a rock, second round is 2 Bulgara, third round is 3 Succubus or whatever. And I would have those stat blocks ready to go. I would put them all on one sheet so you don't have to like look through and see where everything is.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, otherwise it's going to be... A long fight is going to be mostly unbearable. This
is also where you can take your first long rest.
Yeah, so this is the natural break in the mod. It specifically says they have time for a long rest before moving on to part 6. Fortunately, I guess.
Temp check. This is a temp check.
Yeah.
Like,
This is even if you planned on running it all 8 hours of this in one sitting. This is a time to look at your table and be like, do we want to come back to this next week? Like, how are you guys doing?
Everyone need to stretch.
Yeah.
Because I feel like tensions run high on this. This is because like you have just brought them to like the edge of death. Like they could just be dead at this point in the mod. Up, like full disclosure, this could be like mod fail right here.
Yeah, right here.
And I haven't had it happen, but like this is a fail potential right here. People are gonna be at ends with other people. It's gonna be definitely a party check on themselves, but just maybe people need to take a break.
Yeah.
Like, but it's worth it. I think.
I think like this is a good time to point out that like successful combats have the threat of death, right? Like, especially like once in a while, if you have 2 of your 4-person party unconscious and the other 2 under 20 hit points by the end of this module or by the end of this combat, you probably did it right. You know, like you probably
Agreed.
That's probably the intent. Pardon me, the intent of this combat. And that doesn't mean like 2 dead party members necessarily. If they've made bad choices, it's whatever, you know, but I think like the sweet spot is like half your party is under 5 hit points or under everybody's under 20 and half your party is under 5 because they've been getting up and down for a while.
I do think that it does say in this mod, and I know in specific areas, make sure your party understands the battlefield. And I cannot reiterate that enough. I know you're at this part, the listening, but you need to make sure that people understand what's happening, and you do not want to do something and then being like, whoa, I didn't think that was going to happen.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I didn't realize that was happening. Make sure, I mean, it's
Once
going to
again,
naturally
like
occur.
you want to provide all the tools and information for your party that they could possibly need, and then like they get to sink or swim based off how they use those tools.
Exactly. So yeah.
Part 6, The Dark Prince's Plan. Finally, the heroes are afforded a long rest. The Darrow have destroyed any clear chance of military victory against Maeramydra. The heroes may have a chance at destroying the head of the beast, however. Factions stand to hold their gains while the party teleports to the pinnacle of Maeramydra to face Grast and put an end to his corruption once and for all. Several small encounters face the heroes on their way to the final goal, eating up spell slots and burning through resources as they climb the confusing and admittedly poorly mapped Undying Temple. Finally, the party faces their most challenging encounter yet, Lord Grast, his Vrock advisor, and the demon-blooded fire giant Helid Hellspawn. First things first, the map is garbage. It's not a good map in this section. It's good in terms of like mapping out the tower.
In-person play makes this way easier to explain.
I think that's probably true.
Online, I feel like I was just like...
Yeah. It's a mess because it's like, it's a 3-dimensional tower, it's top-down views, some of it's ethereal, some of it's not.
It spins up and into a point, which then makes every subsequent room smaller, but then it makes the other rooms bigger. It makes no sense. And like, I do like what they, like, once again, I think this is a symptom of going through this on online play versus I've seen this in person play, where having physical representations makes it a lot easier.
I think that's probably true.
And there's, as a DM, like I always try to look and see like, hey, how can I describe this? Is there any like similar way? Is there a current structure in our world that I could like be like, hey, this is what this is. And like there's not many. I mean, I know there are some out there, but like there's not many out here that you can be like, hey, this is what it is. And then you flash a picture and it's like, oh, and imagine that upside down spinning and there's an orb in the middle. It's like, okay. But the other part of it is that I don't necessarily care for, I do and don't, is that we have Elisand. show up and is now with the party.
In true like left in Act 2, returns in Act 5 fashion.
Yeah,
Um,
so
she
you
plays a role in earlier Greg Marks mods in the season.
and she's around it gives a lot of details about her character, but I'll get there. I'm not quite there in my head as we get further in. Your first encounter at the base of the tower, you encounter a demon. I don't remember which one it was, and he's like, "Come enjoy," and like Elisan's there, or like Elisan was around, and like she imbibes in some of the stuff. She vomits, and it's like, then she starts hanging on to the party, and there's just there is such weird interactions in this tower, whether it's flipping in between the ethereal plane and not, or just like what you find in here. It's challenging as you get further up the tower. The rooms get smaller and smaller and smaller. You finally get to Helga's room, where she has to get to the ethereal plane somehow, and then there's on the maps themselves, it doesn't make sense on how you get to Grass Chamber and whatever, but like there's as you said, there's resource checks here essentially with all, using spell slots and stuff, but like the last fight isn't easy.
It's a tough fight. Yeah.
It was an like it was like an hour and a half long fight, 2-hour fight.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not because like it's just you have Helga or held there, the female fire giant. You have a Varrock advisor, and you have, oh, by the way, Lord Grass. Just there.
Just chilling.
Just having like 800 hit points.
Yeah.
But what's cool
his hit points are reduced as you go through the combat when you deal with the
it
things,
is, right? But like it's still like not good.
Yeah, it's still tough for sure. Once you get to the fight, the idea of the fight is that you have to deal with these 7 symbols of evil, and you have to mar them or dispel them or whatever.
But the issue is, what you have to do is let Elisande be really the star of the show.
Yeah, and that's a bummer for sure. That's one of the issues. It's the reason I don't run like DM PCs. Like I never I do everything I can to avoid like having a player character in a game I'm running. And if I'm running a character, it's because someone is absent or the party has like hired on mercenaries or something. And I'm just like facilitating that, right? Like I don't make choices as a player when I run a game. And this really feels like Greg Marks putting his own PC into the module in a way that takes away from the players playing the game.
There's no way that a PC can do what Elisande does.
No.
Like, what her involvement in the mod is required. And I don't want to like poo-poo on Elisande. I think she's in and of herself, she's an interesting character, and you find out that she's from the dark. She's a child of the Dark Sun. Then you have an exarch of Mieliki following her, which is a blind goat, who is actually a gnome, like satyr. Like as she unforms, and like there's a weird interaction, like an NPC to NPC interaction that's like stated. It's like, oh, I know that's you, and then he's like, bang, and then like she turns from goat into gnome, and like it's a weird interaction, and then you have Elisande just like stabbing stuff and like taking the hearts of stuff. Like there's just it's tough because the fight exists as long as she is moving. And he's not going to attack her because that's not how this combat works.
Yeah.
And realistically, there's 12 turns until she's like, all right, time to stab him.
Yeah.
Because she like on her turn will mark it and then stab it, or mark it and then next turn stab it. I don't remember how it was.
That's how it works.
So it's like 12 turns or whatever, however many things there are. And like, as a DM, thought nothing of it because it's like that's not their main concern. But there's a systematic removal, as you said, of his powers from what she does. And then it doesn't make sense what Grass says. He's like, oh, why are you doing that? And then doesn't immediately go over and just kill her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like...
Yeah, I don't really... I think I understand what, like, the intent of this combat was. It was like a...
This was a time It felt
like
a
survival thing,
combat.
right? Like, if you can hold out 12 rounds, you'll win the day, right?
Oh, and by the way, there's 3 really tough combatants here.
Yeah. I don't think it particularly works very well. I think there's a lot of, like, narrative issues here. I think there's a lot of, like, mechanical issues here. There's some social lines that are clearly crossed.
I don't like it as a player
NPC, the
or
star
as a
of the
DM.
show.
Yeah. Like, that was my issue.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, look, she's going to go trot over there and stab something else. Also, this room is too small.
It's much too small, yeah.
There's a bottleneck that happens immediately.
Like, there's not enough room
not...
for the enemies in this room. Like, for the 3, like, enemies
there's
in the room. There's
not enough space. And that's another unfortunate thing.
Yeah.
But, like, even getting to this room doesn't make sense. You go through like a little hole, and then it, like, opens up into another area, and that's too small. And the combat itself is interesting. I like the fact that you get to fight a god. Or a deity, whatever.
Yeah.
Or a demon.
In a way that, like, doesn't feel silly, right?
But as soon as you get the situation with Ellison having the parties relying on Ellison, like, I didn't like it. I didn't like as a DM, like, oh, he just hit you for 1,000 damage. Now she's gonna go walk over and go Mara symbol and stab something.
Yeah.
And it's like, it literally made, as you said, it was a survival situation. But there's no good way as a DM to make that not feel crappy.
Especially when the party doesn't know going into it that it's a survival situation. The party can't, like, help to expedite it. Like, the kind of
the challenges are just too tough.
It's too much. Maybe if you have a wizard in the party or somebody high in,
even still, it's like you're taking away valuable resources.
Yeah.
To deal with something that she's gonna deal with eventually, but like, because she has a certain order that she'll skip in, and he is a demon lord.
Yeah.
And I would almost say if the party, if somebody that takes their turn to do something else, I'm going to go over and stab that guy, because like I am the problem. And like, if let's say a rogue goes over there and says, "Oh, I'm gonna try to help you," I'm gonna give the 4 instance. I'm going to ignore whatever I was attacking. And
yeah, and it's frustrating because I don't disagree with you, but at that point, like, why wouldn't he just attack Ellison, right? Like, it just feels.
And it's too. It's like, oh, you darn kid, you hold on, and then keep on stabbing the other.
I guess like you could. If I had to come up with a way to, like, justify that, I would probably do something like he tries to stab at Ellison, but there's some kind of divine shield, right? Because she's like doubly like blessed with the Dark Sun and Myliki, so like maybe he can't attack her. I don't know. It feels like plot armor for plot armor. It is plot armor for plot armor's sake, but at least it's a justification, right, as to why he's not like just unloading on this little girl, because like the Demon Lord doesn't have a problem with that, right? Like, I don't know.
It's a tough fight. This is a tough fight, and it does not feel good. Like, it doesn't feel good because of Ellison, but she is a functionally necessary and required component of this fight.
In what would be a very satisfying capstone module, it takes away from the satisfaction, and I think that's its biggest like pitfall. Is this could have been a very like. You could have stepped away from this module and been like, Season 3 was, like, wrapped up nicely. I feel really good about having been in Season 3. It was fun. But instead it was like, it was fun, but there was this weird thing that happened. I don't really feel that important.
Yeah, when the NPC is literally doing your job.
Yeah.
I'd rather just have a timer on the wall. It clicks down every 6 seconds.
Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe,
Anyway.
maybe that's something you could do. Like, maybe forego, like, if you redo this and agree, maybe that's something you do. Like, maybe there's some celestial being that's like counteracting. Like, maybe it's me, Leaky herself.
Yeah.
Like, that's going like, this isn't right. And like, her interaction is like providing a buzzer beater on the wall that just shows up, and it just looks like a shot clock. And it's like 12, 11. And then it's like Grass is like, no! And then, I don't know.
He's looking at the shot clock concernedly. I don't know.
Every 6 seconds.
Right. Anyway, win or lose, the heroes' actions have consequences. If successful, the heroes have pushed back the madness, and the rebels of Elventree and the government of New Hillsfar vow to work together to bolster their ranks and send support to the recently destroyed Mole Master. The heroes prove unable to complete the task. Unity grows further out of reach as the Underdark denizens grow ever more distrustful and more disdainful, and the government of New Hillsfar retreat to their old racist ways. Any final comments here, Jake?
I do, actually.
Okay.
I think that if, for instance, you are running, let's say you, at this point, decide to run a separate campaign, run into Season 5. 4 is not really, you can't really work this into Season 4, or maybe you did this in Season 3, and then you're going to go do a different season.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what the hero's actions are, and you're maintaining the same table, but they're starting new characters, this is one of those situations where you could say, oh, a new campaign now has the impact of what happened at this event.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, there's not many times that you get to do that, but like literally if you kill Grass, then Hillsfar people are more prevalent in Mole Master. Let's say you go to Mole Master next.
Yeah.
Or, now Grass lives, and now the area is tainted with a foul darkness.
Yeah. I think those are all good choices. I think there's a dozen choices you could come up with to have those consequences kind of carry over. And I think all of them are good, right? I think continuity, and maybe it's the homebrewer in me, right? But I think continuity between campaigns is just as important as continuity within.
Exactly.
I think it leads to the notion of like building like a unified world that the players are playing in. It, I guess, feels a little bit more sandboxy that way. It's not all rails. It's kind of your actions in a past campaign have had consequences here.
Yep.
There's a lot of reason it gets more player buy-in. It's more interesting for a TM to run.
Yep.
Up kind of above the table, you can be like, oh, remember when you did that one thing? Well, that's what that is, like.
Yep.
There's a lot of that, and I think it goes a long way to bolster kind of camaraderie at your table.
And you as a DM, it makes you, you're a better DM for it.
I think so too. Yep. Anything else?
No.
So there it is, DDAL 3-16, Assault on Maeramydra, the end of Season 3. Thank you so much for listening to some advice to streamline and renovate your tables. Be a good neighbor. Give us that thumbs up. Subscribe. Toll the dead for notifications. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon. And from now until the next time, Season 4, roll together. Thanks, guys.